So I think what I'd like to cover this evening is belief systems, tabletops, maybe do one or two examples, if anyone's open to sharing and kind of working through that process so we can kind of see how the process works a little better. And a little bit of Ho'oponopono if we have time. You look really excited about that.
I just learned about it this year.
Yeah. So Ho'oponopono was just like a mantra or a prayer that we can do, which is also assisting in terms of rewiring our reactions to things. So, does anybody have a preference where we start? Do you want to start with an example? See where we go? Okay. I'd like to start with an example if we could, just to kind of get back into the tapping mode. What we'll do is we'll have someone who's ready to tap on an issue. It'd be a great opportunity for you, because you're new, just to kind of follow along and see what's happening and what it's all about. I'm hoping that it'll make sense by observing. And it's okay if it doesn't, because I'll answer questions along the way. And then what we'll do is, as a group here, is we'll support the individual, whoever's decided to share the experience. We'll support that individual by simply tapping along. So we've talked about in group sessions, what's beautiful about EFT is that just tapping and supporting somebody is a fantastic way of healing our own issues that may or may not be connected, but helping that person in their healing journey as well. So we've talked about fear of water, fear of birds, fear of spiders, and driving, being a passenger, being uncomfortable for you. So is anybody willing?
So is that for anxiety though? Would that be classified as anxiety? Or you get more, do you become more specific?
It's going to be more specific. So I'm going to start with something general. Like we might start, if you're open, to start on, even though I don't like being a passenger, I don't like being a passenger, I don't like being a passenger. And then we're going to get a bit more specific about why you don't like being a passenger, what comes up for you. So a lot of times it's about fear underneath that. It's about trust underneath that. Do you have a history of being in a car accident? Is my first question.
We had one. Yeah, I've had one, but I had it before I even had that car.
Okay, so the wanting to be in control as a passenger happened prior to the accident.
Yeah.
Because often there's a connection.
Yeah.
Were you driving in the accident?
Yeah, somebody hit me.
Oh,
I
okay.
was stopped, turning left, and the guy behind me slid.
And how severe on a scale of 1 to 10 was that experience for you?
Probably 10.
So we're in high school.
Oh.
No. Oh, that was, yeah, that one.
Which one are you
I
talking
was
about?
thinking of that one. I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
had
I was 10 too.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, now when if I ask what was your earliest memory of that same feeling of being, when you get anxious as a passenger, what's your earliest memory of that same feeling? We'd be able to get to the root. Remember we've talked about how this spiderweb
Right.
kind of begins when we have a negative experience or negative emotion, how that neural pathway gets to build and build and build until it's this big neural net mess collective spiderweb, right? So let's start at the outside. Let's start at the outside and work in. Okay, so if we were to think about being a passenger in a car, or tell me about the most recent experience of you being a passenger in a car where it made you feel anxious.
So, like driving with my husband down 400, and it maybe he got too close to another vehicle.
Okay?
And the hand goes, or the brake goes on there, the head goes that way, so I'm not looking this way, so.
So you don't want to see it, right?
Exactly.
But you feel like
okay.
you want to brake, or you want to hold on, or, okay, now when you think of that, can you give me a number on a scale of 1 to 10 sitting in the chair safe now? But when you think of that, does your anxiety level go up?
Yeah.
And if you could scale that on a scale of 0 to 10, what would it be?
So probably a 7.
Okay. We're probably not going to get to a 10 because she's not in the car right now.
Yeah.
And it might come back a little bit when she gets in the car, but in the car is a great opportunity to tap, right? So,
Do you want me to light candles?
no, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, do you want to do sore spot or karate chop? And we're all going to tap along with her. Karate chop? Okay. You can just watch or join, whatever you like to do. So even though I have this anxious feeling,
You know, I have this anxious feeling.
I don't like my husband driving.
I don't like my husband driving.
He's way too close to that car.
He's way too close to that car.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let that anxious feeling go.
to let that anxious feeling go.
See the situation differently.
See the situation differently.
Even though I have this anxious feeling,
Even though I have this anxious feeling,
I don't like the way he's driving.
I don't like the way he's driving.
He's way too close to that car.
He's too close to that car.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let that anxious feeling go.
to let that
Feel calm and relaxed instead.
Feel calm and relaxed instead.
Good. Even though I have this anxious feeling.
Even though I have this anxious feeling.
I don't like how he's driving.
I don't know how he's driving.
Maybe I can choose to let that go
Maybe I can choose to let that go.
and feel calm and relaxed instead.
Feel calm and relaxed instead.
Good. Inner part of the eyebrow. This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
Oh, I don't like how he's driving.
I don't like how he's driving.
Oh, he's way too close to that car.
He's way too close to that car.
This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
Way too close to that car.
Way too close to that car.
This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
Oh, he's way too close to that car.
Way too close to that car.
Side of the thumb. Good. This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
I don't like his driving.
I don't like his driving.
I want to be in control.
I want to be in control.
Makes me nervous.
Makes me nervous.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let this anxious feeling go.
to let this anxious feeling go.
Good. Back of the hand. Feel calm and relaxed instead.
Feel calm and relaxed instead.
Good. Choose a spot ahead of you. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Look down hard to the right. Down hard to the left. Big circle. Good. Other direction. Good. Horizontal right to left. This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
Keep looking right to left. Inner part of the eyebrow. This anxious feeling.
This anxious feeling.
I don't like how he's driving.
I don't like how he's driving.
Too close to that car.
Too close to that car.
Makes me nervous.
Makes me nervous.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to see it differently.
to see it differently.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to feel calm and relaxed instead.
to feel calm and relaxed instead.
Trust to know that I'm safe.
Trust to know that I'm safe.
Let that anxious feeling go.
Let that anxious feeling go.
Choosing to see it differently.
Choosing to see it differently.
All the times he's been a good driver.
All the time he's been a good driver.
All the times he's kept me safe.
All the time he's kept me safe.
Good. Breath in and breath out. Same scene. He's driving. You're the passenger. You're behind the car. It'll make way more sense.
Probably,
I'm nervous to see what I show for you.
Yeah. Okay.
probably a 4 now.
Okay.
Great.
Could you be more specific about it?
Like it's like this feeling in here,
Uh-huh.
like a tightness and it's funny because it's not worried about somebody hitting us. 'Cause
Uh-huh.
That's the accidents I've been in where
Uh-huh.
they've hit me, but it's us hitting someone else.
You're worried about hitting somebody else.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Because they maybe break.
What if they break and we can't stop?
Right.
Even though I have this fear
Even though I have this fear,
that if they break, we can't stop in time.
if they break, we can't stop in time.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let that feeling go.
to let that feeling go.
Feel confident and safe instead.
Feel confident and safe instead.
Okay. Even though I have this fear.
Even though I have this fear.
If they break, we can't stop in time.
If they break, we can't stop in time.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to feel calm and relaxed instead.
to feel calm and relaxed instead.
Even though I have this fear
Even though I have this fear
that if they break, I can't stop in time.
that if they break, I can't stop in time.
Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let that fear go.
to let that fear go.
Instead, choose to remember
Instead choose to remember
all the times that someone breaks in front of me
all the times that someone breaks in front of me
and I was able to break in time.
and I was able to break in time.
Inner part of the eyebrow, this fear.
This fear,
This fear.
this fear.
What if they break
What if they break?
and we can't stop?
We can't stop.
What if they break?
If they break,
We're following too close.
falling too close.
We might not be able to stop.
We might not be able to stop.
This fear.
This fear,
This fear.
this fear.
If they break,
If they break,
I don't think we can stop in time.
I don't think we can stop in time.
I wonder if that's really true.
I think that's really true.
Back of the hand. Close. Open. Down hard right. Down hard left. Big circle. Other direction. Good. Side to side. What if we can't stop in time?
What if we can't stop in time?
Maybe we can.
Maybe we can.
Maybe we can stop in time.
Maybe we can stop in time.
I've done that lots of times.
I've done that lots of times.
Been able to stay safe
Been able to stay safe.
just by being aware
Just by being aware.
and breaking when I need to.
And breaking when I need to.
Letting this fear go.
Letting this fear go.
This remaining fear.
This remaining fear.
Choosing to let it go.
Choosing choosing to let it go.
opening up my mind
Opening up my mind
to seeing the situation differently,
to seeing the situation differently.
letting this fear go
Letting this fear go.
fully and completely.
Fully and completely.
Breath in, breath out.
It's very funny. I'm like, yeah, I feel like laughing because it's like, okay, it's just so silly.
That's when we're at a zero.
It's like, Ken's a good driver. He's never been in an accident like with me and,
Ken's a good driver.
yeah. Like, why don't we put on the brake, right?
That's how we know. People are like, how do I know when I'm at a zero? Like, well, I asked you to imagine the scene and you think it's ridiculous.
Exactly. I'm picturing myself looking at the side window, right? It's like, are you a loser?
I love it. Do you know how many years it would take in talk therapy to do that? That's insane. Oh, that's so
my
good.
God, that's funny.
Awesome.
Okay, let's do that driving with my 16-year-old daughter.
Okay. Even though
That's
I
what I
don't trust
was
my 16-year-old
visualizing.
daughter.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
okay.
That's awesome. Oh, Barry, thank you for
Wow.
sharing that. Good. So probably when she gets in the car with Ken, she'll probably stay
I'll
with
start
this.
tapping.
You probably won't need to tap, is what
I
I'm
won't
saying.
need
It's
to tap,
probably
okay.
clear because you think it's ridiculous. So now your association is, when you have that thought, it's associated with laughter.
Right.
It's associated with that's ridiculous.
Right.
More particularly because we add in the setup statement, even though I have this fear, what if we don't stop in time? Maybe I could choose to remember that I've stopped 1,000 times and never hit a car
Yeah.
in front of me, right? Like Ken's a good driver.
Yeah.
Is your next immediate thought.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? So yes, the setup statement is really important. That's why we kind of went through some different scenarios. And that's why I like doing scenarios, because people are like, oh, I see how it works. I see how it works. Nice. Any other questions about that? Nice. Okay. Let's talk about some tabletops. Belief systems. In your handout. You will find a sheet that has tabletops. So, shifting belief systems is really fun. Working with fears and phobias and things like that is really fun too, just to kind of see how quickly we can shift something so simple. Working on a belief system that's kind of been held for many years, if not decades, is a bit more complex. So it sometimes takes a little bit longer. But as you can see, like if that was one table leg, we would just move on to the next table leg at this point. So we'll talk a little bit about how belief systems get formed and developed and how that contributes to emotions that we keep feeling over and over again. So if there is a particular emotion or your top 3 emotions that you feel on a regular basis, what would those top 3 emotions be? Anybody cares to share? Someone,
Sorry, say that again.
what's the emotion that you feel on most frequently or most often? So I feel frustrated often, I feel relaxed often, I feel overwhelmed often. On a regular daily basis, if you had to think about it, on average, over the past year, for example, what do you think, or an emotion that you think you've actually kind of experienced quite consistently throughout your life? What would that emotion be?
Anxious.
Anxious. So you've felt anxious for a very long time. It kind of comes in and out of your life,
Yes.
I imagine. Yeah. Okay. What were you?
Yeah, anxious is there, or self-doubt.
Oh. It's very common for you. Okay. It can be a positive one, by the way, too. Yeah.
Yeah, joy, happiness.
Joy, yeah. Because you meet those people that, like we talked about, that are always happy. Do you have one that you feel
Frustrated.
frustrated a lot? Mm-hmm.
Everyone's taken mine.
Oh,
I was gonna say anxious, then I moved into self-doubt, and then I was gonna say frustrated.
awesome. It could be one of those too.
Okay, well, it's all three.
Okay.
Pissed off, irritated.
Okay. Right. You have
Did
one?
anybody feel
Overwhelmed.
pissed off?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed,
Yeah, that's a big one for me.
yeah.
Feel overwhelmed a lot. Yeah, big surprise, eh? What about you? Do you want to share? You don't have to.
Me?
Yeah.
Abused sometimes.
Pardon?
Abused.
Amused. Yay, we have a positive one. So I'll explain a little bit about why there's that common thread, why we seem to have carried this one particular emotion through our life with us, right? So sometimes it starts a really long time ago, and there's a really good book by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Has anybody ever heard of him? He's in a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And he's actually a chiropractor, but very philosophical and mystical, and he's got a book called How to Change Your Brain, I think it's called. It's a white book, blue cover. Fantastic, fantastic read, very scientific. What he basically explains, I'm just going to summarize the book the best as I can, of course, from my understanding of it. When you feel a feeling of anxiousness or overwhelmed or frustrated, whatever that self-doubt, when you have that feeling, it actually initiates first in your mind, right? And your brain actually releases a neurotransmitter that has that molecule of emotion. Ever read there's another great book called Molecules of Emotion. Ever heard of that? Yeah. So when that molecule of emotion is released into your physical body, it actually latches onto a cell. So when it latches onto a cell, I want you to imagine that it's like a lock and a key. So this molecule of emotion, whatever that emotion is, because your brain and your body doesn't care if it's a positive or a negative emotion, it locks onto like a cell, like a lock and a key. And then what happens is that cell splits, right? Because we're always growing and changing. That cell creates a daughter cell. Now that daughter cell has the same receptor site for that same molecule of emotion. It is irrelevant whether this emotion is good or bad to your brain and your body. It's irrelevant. But I'd like some more of that, please. This receptor site says, I'd like some more of that, please. Sends a signal to your brain, more particularly your RAS, your reticular activating system. It's a part of the brain that's always scanning the environment for what's important to you, right? You know when you want, like, you're really thinking about buying a new red Mini Cooper, because that's the next car that I'm going to own. And when I'm in a parking lot or on a highway, what do I see? I don't see any other car, just the red Mini Cooper that's coming towards me from a kilometer away. Or I'm in a parking lot and I can spot the red Mini Cooper on the other side of the parking lot. Every other car is irrelevant because my reticular activating system is seeking out for me what's important. Okay? So your brain will go and seek out a way to find that same molecule of emotion. So now I have attracted into my life, I'll use that word lightly because it's not my favorite word, but I will attract into my life another circumstance which creates that thought, which creates that frustrated feeling, that anxious feeling, that overwhelmed feeling, that amused feeling, and that brain creates that neurotransmitter which is released in my physical body, which latches onto the new cell like a lock and a key, and then that cell splits again and creates a new daughter cell. And so the cycle repeats. I'd like to fill this receptor site. I'd like to experience that again. Sends a message to your brain finds the experience within your environment, you react to your external environment, you create the same emotion again, latches onto the cell, and it splits again, and you now have cells that are addicted, and I use that word lightly, to that molecule of emotion. Now, if you're addicted to positive emotions, that's great. If you're addicted to negative emotions,
It sucks.
it sucks.
Sucks big time.
But we've already talked about this, that your brain doesn't know the difference, your subconscious mind actually does not know the difference between what's real and imagined. So once you become aware, you have two things to do. One, stop reacting to your external environment, right? By staying calm and equanimous within, staying in the present moment. And when that happens again, you'll say, I'm going to choose not to react with frustration, with overwhelmed, with self-doubt, with fill in the blank. I choose to remain calm and relaxed instead. Your next job, the second job, is to find a way to get addicted to the emotion that you want to feel. I don't care what it is, make it up. If you want to feel joy, if you want to feel excitement, if you want to feel powerful, if you want to feel relaxed, if you want to feel blissed, if you want to feel loved, if you want to feel whatever, you can either imagine that or focus on a situation that's already occurring in your life. If you want to feel gratitude all day long, then all you have to do is focus on gratitude. And like, oh, but I don't have anything in my life to be grateful for because this is going wrong, and this is going wrong, and this is going wrong. And the more that you're thinking about what's going wrong, the more that you're releasing that neurotransmitter in your brain, into your physical body, it's latching onto a cell and creating more cells so that you can feel that more often. That's not very fun. So if I can either imagine, because when I imagine vividly imagine and allow myself to feel the emotion of whatever good emotion I want to feel. Maybe it's loved, maybe it's blessed, maybe it's graceful, maybe it's gratitude, maybe it's whatever. If you can't get there, we can tap to get there. That's where the tapping comes in. You can imagine that, or you can just focus on your life and choose to feel any of those emotions. If you can find little tidbits of it in your life, then focus on that and focus on that and focus on that. And so that every time I feel gratitude, whether it's just in my imagination or actually feeling gratitude, that neurotransmitter is released into my physical body, latches onto a cell like a lock and a key, and then creates another daughter cell with the same receptor site for gratitude. So then you can be addicted to gratitude. So you're changing your reality from the inside out, which in my opinion is the only way to change your reality. That's not really just my opinion. There's lots of philosophers out there that might agree. Steep stuff, eh? Questions so far? When you choose, if you don't have anything in your life to be grateful for, if you want to feel joyous, loved, compassionate, blessed, whatever emotion it is that you want to feel, and you don't have anything in your life currently that can assist you in feeling that, and you want to imagine it, there's 3 things you need to do when you visualize it. You can use, or that I would recommend, because the subconscious mind really responds well to color, it responds well to movement, and it responds to emotion. So when you're doing the visualization of you walking away with the perfect romantic partner that you've always dreamed of, or you being on a beautiful beach that makes you feel relaxed, or whatever it is that you want to feel, that's up to you. In your visualization, in your imagination, if you can include color, movement in the scene, like walking down the beach, or doing something with your romantic partner, whatever that is. And then the third thing, of course, being emotion. Because like we said, if I can create that emotion in my mind, then I can allow my physical body to be there. I can get my body to feel that, to create that cell, to create that neural pathway, to create that reaction. Yeah?
How does that differ from guided imagery?
It's not.
Maybe same thing.
Yep, same thing. So for most people, it's really tough. I think the toughest part is pulling away from our current day reality and making a dedicated practice of guided imagery. Or, I mean, you can do guided imagery listening to something, or you can do guided imagery yourself. Some people have a difficult time initially doing it themselves, getting into a relaxed state, so conscious mind, thinking mind gets out of the way, and you can actually be in a deeper relaxed state, which is essentially the best state to be in if you're going to feel that emotion.
So when you're feeling that emotion, or then I'm going to call it a negative one,
Yeah?
then you're suggesting that you then go to this, you go to this other place.
If you can. What I suggest actually is that you tap.
Okay.
Okay? I'm feeling a negative emotion. I have attracted again, that's another scenario in my life. My reticular activating system has found me another reason to be overwhelmed, anxious, fill in the blank. Okay, well, what's the quickest way of getting out of that feeling? The quickest way I know is to tap. Even though I'm feeling this anxious feeling again because of A, B, or C that's in front of me. So when that anxious feeling is gone, you're not going to stay there and dwell in that anxious feeling for the next 3 to 6 hours, or however, the rest of your day or the rest of the week, or whatever it is. And the less time you spend in that, the more time you can spend in a positive emotion, and the less you're strengthening that negative emotion. Does that make sense? So you're going to experience the negative emotion again. I pretty much guarantee that from some point forward after leaving here, after leaving Grail Springs, right? But when it comes up, now that you have the knowledge of like, oh, well, the more that I feel frustrated or overwhelmed, the more that I'm strengthening that, and the more that I'm going to continue to attract that. That's why most people who have difficulties in childhood or what have you, that just they're still having the same difficulties in adulthood, or people who have experienced struggle with weight loss are so used to struggling with weight loss that
They get addicted.
their body gets addicted to the feeling of struggling with weight loss. And so they need to strengthen the neural pathway of I love my body, I love my body, I love my body, because that's what you want to feel anyway, right? But they're afraid to love their body. They're afraid to, because then I won't criticize myself to work out or exercise or eat right. But if the feeling that you want to feel is that you love your body, well then there's nothing stopping you in this moment from feeling that. Nothing.
Yeah, like I think I'm definitely addicted to and have that joy and happiness and all of that stuff, like that happens, like
The passion,
neurons, yeah, going off all over the place. But I also think I'm addicted to, I have those cells of that anxious, day. And so when something happens, it's like, oh, catch that one, oh, okay, I gotta feel that.
Yeah. And it's okay to feel it when it happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, all right, how do I reduce the number of cells that are addicted to that? Right? Because again, we're all human, we're gonna, feel these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not saying that
Whatever,
we
yeah.
want to never experience that again,
Yeah.
because sometimes that's the learning and the journey of life.
Right.
And I think crying at a funeral is good, and feeling that is good, and there is emotions that need to be felt, processed, experienced, and let go, and that's safe and that's perfectly fine. What I'm talking about is the pattern that's followed you for the past decade, right? That's different.
Right. And so how to break that pattern.
How to break the
like
pattern.
what you're talking
So you
about.
tap when it comes up,
Okay.
and then you spend as much time as you can in guided imagery or visualization, feeling the emotion that you'd like to feel more often. There's a really great quote by Neville Goddard, and it's "Feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled."
You mind repeating that?
Neville Goddard, and it's "Feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled." Feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So if the wish fulfilled meant you felt amazing and you felt grateful and you were blessed and you couldn't even, you're so excited, then visualize what it is that you want and try to get into that feeling as much as you can. Allow that emotion to be there as often as you can. And then let go of how it turns out. That's my other piece of advice. Because what you're looking at from your belief system, which we'll get into the tabletops in a minute, is I want you to imagine like a square about this big. Okay? And this is your belief system, and this is the little tunnel through which you're viewing the world, through which the conscious mind views the world. Because your subconscious is really has a whole set of belief systems, right? Like writing on the walls of what you think is possible and how much money you think can come into your life and what a partner really looks like and all of how healthy you can be. And so you have these subconscious beliefs which create this tunnel vision. I'm going to use that word lightly, but you're kind of viewing the world through this pinhole. So it's not that other options aren't available. It's you don't see them because it's not in line with what you believe. You don't see the world that way because that would be at a huge conflict with your belief system, right? So if you woke up tomorrow and you had more money than you could possibly imagine and you had the body that you've always dreamed of, it wouldn't be believable to you, right? So your world can only reflect back to you what you believe is possible. So if something doesn't exist in your life, it's because there's a belief system that says
Very
it's...
interesting what you said, like when the Spaniards discovered South America, the natives couldn't see the ships
They couldn't see them.
because they were there, they couldn't see them because the brain had not processed that that's what a ship is.
That's what a ship
They
is.
didn't know what it was, so they couldn't see it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's amazing how, we think we see with our eyes, but what we see with our
No,
with our brain.
we see with our brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brain, because if your brain doesn't have a concept of that,
Yeah.
it can't see it, like the natives couldn't see the ships. Even though the ships existed for those who were in the ships because they believe in that reality, right? It's fascinating. So that's the hard part, where you're like, when you start to realize that everything out there is just a vibration that's reflecting back to you what you believe is possible. For a moment, there's just like, damn it. And then, when you realize how you can shift belief systems using EFT, which takes a bit more time to break those down, let go of how it's going to unfold for you. Ask for what it is that you want, feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled, fire that emotion in your physical body, and know that the divine could bring that into your life, because the divine has a concept this big. It's infinite, really. I can't make it big enough. Okay, so you say, well, I want this to happen in my life, and I have no idea how that's going to happen, but I bet you I could do this and this and this, and you're going to work really hard, and you're going to try to do this, this, and this, and this. But that's because you're looking through the pinhole. If you felt the feeling of the wish fulfilled as often as you could, and using EFT as a tool to get you to that place, what's going to happen when you let go and say, I don't really care how that unfolds. Dear divine, whoever you want to bring that into my life, I'm open to that. And what happens is the divine, because the divine has this many infinite options, will put the right person in front of you at the exact right time, and it should be effortless. Effortless. I wrote down on a piece of paper that I was going to create an EFT product by the end of 2010. And then I closed the book and I put it away. Forgot about it. Just completely forgot about it. I got a random email from a random guy who does a lot of online marketing and stuff on Amazon somewhere like in March of 2011. And I now have, not only do I have an EFT product, I actually have 2 EFT products. I have an EFT training DVD series, EFT-DVDs.com, and I have my first book coming out on Amazon next week. Yay! The Hidden Secrets of EFT. And so a friend of mine, I post on Facebook, the Hidden Secrets of EFTs on Amazon next week, and she emails me and says, I've been looking for a publisher, Carol, how did you do it? I've got a book that I want to publish. And I'm like, well, I'd like to say, call this person, but really all I did was write it down on a piece of paper and felt the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And I know that's not the answer, but once it became believable for me, because I felt the feeling of, that's all I did, is I imagined putting it on Facebook, and I'm telling people, and I'm presenting, and I'm loving it, and I feel fantastic. And then I got the email, and writing the book and creating the DVDs was a beautiful thing for me to do. It wasn't work.
Yeah.
The effort level was, it doesn't feel like effort, and it shouldn't feel like effort. And I know that's really out there for people who work really hard. It's not that I don't work hard in other aspects of my life, but when someone's put in front of you, you're going to have this moment like, oh, I should do that. There should be no hesitation. Yeah. And then the miracles continue to unfold for you.
Sorry, can we just go back to first principles? So
Uh-huh.
feel the feeling you want to feel. So what does that do internally? Like you said, you just wrote it down, you felt it, you visualized it, and I'm assuming you had this scene pictured in your head of
Uh-huh.
what it would feel like and look like to have your book published and out there. And I'm not trying to be skeptical, but literally
Okay.
you just wrote it down, put it away, and that was it?
Well, I wrote the book.
No.
But no, I wrote it down.
But then you just kept going with that thought?
I just kept saying, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write an EFT book. And then the publisher contacted me. Like I have he appeared out of here. Because if I try to seek out a publisher and I can't find one and I got denied, and blah, blah, that's because I'm looking through a pinhole of what I think is possible. When I said I'm going to create an EFT product, I had no idea how I was going to do that.
Right, but then intuitively you think, okay, if you want something to happen, you've got to put that action in motion. You've got to work for
Yes.
it, you've got to do something for it. So
That's one option.
Well, and just
I'm
to
just-
what you said though, she got the phone call from this random person, right? Or whatever.
Who found me online
Who
saying,
found- yeah. So the action is, when she took it, she could have said, who is this whack job? How'd they find me? And hang up. But she didn't. It's like, okay, it's the universe presented this. Her intention was, I'm going to write a book. She believed in herself that she was going to write a book.
Had you written a book at that point,
That's what I'm
or
saying.
after the fact?
No.
like, had you even
Oh,
have
okay,
you
you
even
weren't even
did
working
you
on
even
it.
start it? Did you
Nope.
even But was your intention
'cause the
to
DV
Wow.
start it? Like,
the,
how do you?
no, I didn't write the book until he contacted me.
Okay.
I wrote it down, and it was actually really close to New Year's Eve. It was in December when I wrote it. And so within 3 months, I got an email from Leon J., who just does online marketing. He's been in, he knows a lot about EFT, and he just does online marketing. He said, I'd like to do an online training DVD series. I think it's great to do promotional products, but I just like doing online marketing, and I need someone to partner with to create a product. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. What do you want me to do?
Okay.
And he said, do this. And I said, okay. And the next 6 months involved videotaping like 20 hours of my work in workshops and private clients, and sending it to New Zealand where he was, and creating the website, and then creating the book to complement that. So yes, that was work, if you will, but EFT doesn't feel like, Sunday night I'm like, oh, I gotta go to work Monday. You know what I mean? It's like, I could go do that, but I'd much rather work on my project. I'm really excited about it. So there is, Joe Vitale calls it like divine action. Like it's action, but it doesn't feel like work. Do you know what I mean?
Because what is it? Can you just go over like the neuron? Like what is happening then internally to?
Okay, so before Leon contacted me,
Yes.
my publisher contacted me, I would just, I would speak as though it was already happening.
Okay.
So people would contact me and say, yeah, I'm writing a book, I'm doing an EFT training, I'm going to do an EFT training series. I'm creating an EFT product, because I didn't really know at that point what it was going to be. I said, I'm going to create an EFT product. I'm going to create an EFT product. It's going to be done by end of 2011. I'm going to create an EFT product. I'm going to create an EFT product. And so I felt the feeling, how would that make me feel? So when I imagine that, when I think about that, it creates a feeling of success for me.
Right.
It creates a feeling of joy, because that means I can share this technique and my knowledge with infinite people, right? I can share it with more people, and that's really what I want to do, and that makes me feel like I want to cry. Because my goal really, and Gary Craig's goal with giving away the basic teachings of EFT for free for decades to over 10,000 people was, and somebody asked him in an interview, well, why do you do that? He said, because I want people to learn EFT. Do you need more than that? That's it. I want to change the world. Is that enough? And so for me, it was like, I want to change the world. I want to change the world. And so I just kept thinking, I want to change the world. And so when Leon contacted me and I said, yes, it's because I don't know who Leon is. When I first set out that intention, when I wrote it down, I don't know who Leon is. I have no idea. He lives on the other side of the world, to be honest with you. And so the divine says, oh, Carol wants to feel like she can change the world with an EFT product. But the divine's looking at it from this perspective, right? There's infinite opportunities. So the more that I feel that feeling, I'm changing and shifting the literal vibration that surrounds me. And because we're all one and there's a collective consciousness, when Leon's on my website on the other side of the world, he thinks that's the perfect person to create the EFT product that I'm looking for. Because he's looking for someone to partner with.
No, we talked a bit before the receptors. And
Yep.
So you're tapping, and how is that changing?
When I'm imagining my success, I feel the success in my mind.
Yeah.
It releases a success feeling neurotransmitter into my physical body.
Mm-hmm.
The success neurotransmitter latches onto a cell, which then splits and creates a daughter cell.
And then it just perpetuates.
It just perpetuates.
It multiplies. Okay.
Multiplies.
Okay.
So it can happen, that positive feeling happens the same way that in the negative feeling. The body doesn't know the difference. Whatever you keep thinking about or keep focusing on, your body keeps producing.
Okay.
So I just shifted my focus to, well, I teach EFT in St. Catharines, and it's not that big, and there's only so many clients, and how do you really be successful? I live in St. Catharines. That's a limiting belief. So if I wanted to feel success, I just kept feeling the feeling of success. Feel the feeling of success. And then success comes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us are trying to do the opposite. That's really exhausting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You had a question?
Yeah, it is two things really.
Uh-huh.
I think everything about this too. So
Okay.
when you sort of give her that knowledge without expectation of monetary gain, I think it puts a whole different approach to that concept, connection with the divine, as you call it.
Yes.
Because I think it just takes over that whole thing, and I think things happen when you sort of have this focus, oh, I'm gonna write a book and I'll sell it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then I think it changes that whole sort of approach too. So I think that where you're coming from is a good thing. But I think that it's not even just the success, it's the perception of success, right?
Right.
And that you sort of see it, people see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My perception of success is changing the world and driving down the street one day and seeing somebody tapping. You know, and whether or not they learn from me is irrelevant.
Right.
But if I can contribute to the spread of the technique, which I think works wonders, then I would be filled with joy. So.
I'm gonna do it in the elevator too.
You go, do it in the elevator. You go, girl.
Do it in the elevator. No, I'll email you and let you know when I do it, like in an elevator or something.
Carol,
Somebody
guess
goes,
what?
hey, that's EFT, isn't it? I'm gonna go,
Yes, other people know, right? And sometimes I
Exactly.
run into people and like, Carol, what do you do? I'm like, well, I teach this tapping thing. They're like, it's EFT? I'm like, yeah. Like, why are we talking about it like it's this big secret,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
So I have one more question now.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you already explained that. But how does that, I'm a physician, so
Ah.
this question. So how does the tapping sort of have, is there a physiological basis to it? Or are you just kind of focusing on the moment by doing tapping? What is happening?
what you're doing, you've heard of acupuncture, Chinese
Right.
medicine. So what we're doing is we're rewiring the association. So as she feels something that makes her nervous, most people would agree if a thought equals a negative emotion. Gary Craig would say a thought causes a disruption in the energy system or the Chinese meridian lines, which is then experienced as an anxious feeling. Okay, so I can eliminate the domino effect by thinking about what makes me thinking about the negative thought, tapping the acupuncture points that I feel neutral or relaxed or calm, and combining that with a little bit of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, to rewire her association to that thought. So I think about the thought, tap the acupuncture points so I feel, ah. Think about what normally makes you anxious, tap until you feel calm. And repeat and repeat and repeat until the next time you think about that, you feel calm. The memory will stay the same. If it's been a car accident or something from the past, the memory will stay the same, but the cognition sounds ridiculous. So the cognition changes automatically as a result.
So is that like EMDR in some way?
There is one component where we're looking right and looking left. If there is an intense emotion, I will focus a bit more on the eye movements than I will on the tapping, because it's creating that right and left hemisphere amalgamation, if you will, to allow an overreacting amygdala to, process the emotion to prefrontal cortex. Yeah. Some EFT practitioners have taken out the eye movements, which I have I really encourage that and support that, because depending on the client and situation, I will sometimes leave out the tapping and just do eye movements or vice versa. So I just testing with a client to see how they respond.
Have you used this in like post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yeah. Gary Craig, the founder, actually worked a lot with Vietnam vets in the States for quite some time, and it's fantastic. I work with a lot of women that have experienced trauma, a lot of men that have experienced trauma, whether it's abuse or car accidents or what have you. It's fascinating. And again, nothing brings me more joy, because there is no amount for someone who's experienced trauma. There's really no amount of CBT that's gonna help. So, and I've personally experienced DMDR as well, and it's the most fascinating thing I've ever.
what's DMDR?
EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it's a bit of a longer process that does require a very specific certification. Essentially what you're doing is allowing the traumatic memory to come up when someone experiences trauma. The brain sort of freezes, because your brain will initially, like in a car accident, goes into fight or flight, right? So you have that opportunity to either break or get away or do something. But if you don't do anything, you kind of go into freeze mode, where you're watching the whole thing happening and you can't do anything. But the emotion, the fear, the terror, the anger, the whatever, doesn't get processed because of what's happening in the brain, so it gets repressed. Okay? And EMDR, the eye movements, actually any form of bilateral stimulation. So whether that's eye movements or auditorily listening to a sound here and a sound here, it can be kinesthetic, either way. They found that if you allow someone to go back into the memory of it in a safe, gentle way, and it takes a lot of steps to get there, but in a safe, gentle way, when you create that bilateral stimulation, which merges the hemispheres, if you go back into the memory, you're actually here, but you're experiencing it again, which is not fun, but it allows the emotion that didn't get processed at the time to be processed. And then the cognition changes with that. It wasn't my fault, I didn't do anything wrong, or I did what I could, right?
But what if you can't really recall the full intensity of the event? There is some
Okay. It's really common with trauma that there's dissociation that happens. So sometimes it's with abuse or what have you. That takes a bit more work. If you don't have any particular memory of the trauma, from my own personal experience, I can tell you that you can still do EMDR, right? So I mean, for some people, what happens is that the emotion comes up, even if they have no memory of it. If they have no visual memory, no auditory memory, they just kind of get random triggers. Does that make sense to you? You might get triggers that come up. What we would do is just tap when that trigger comes up, or do eye movements when you experience that trigger. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, because I actually did try some of this, but then back when you saw, you know, any kind of pattern, you don't think there was any great effects to go and anything.
Uh-huh.
Do that, you know, like just letting the negative energy eventually
Dissipate.
clear,
Yeah.
right, dissipate.
Were you doing EFT on your own or with a practitioner?
I tried it only once, twice with a practitioner, and I had like no result at all in the office.
Okay.
But then there was, you know, I had previously to that read the book on the EFT.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that I did some with the practitioner. And it had like a good effect, like maybe like, it definitely like calmed things down. So I'm not so like in certain things rise, but it didn't really solve it.
Okay.
Because maybe I didn't get much of whatever original trigger,
Right. It's probably the original memory that's still residing.
which I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I know.
Never too late to have a happy childhood.
No, I've heard that quote too. It's never too late. I love that.
So,
It's never too
I don't
late.
know who said it, but it's
It's just it's a way of reprocessing what you experienced or reframing what you experienced. Okay. It's possible. It's just going to require more than 2 sessions though.
Yeah, I actually did it, I did it for a couple weeks.
On your own?
Yeah, on my own.
Yeah.
On the house
It's going through a traumatic, if you're going through a trauma and you're trying to process trauma, I would highly recommend that you work with an EFT practitioner that's done a lot of trauma work with people, or an EMDR therapist. Have you gone into an EMDR therapist?
I went to somebody who's very well known,
Uh-huh.
you know, in the city that I come from, but I didn't have a whole lot of results with this person.
Oh.
You know, myself to do that. But it's not like a certain event, it's just like how I would react with oversensitivity to certain things.
Okay.
It could be triggers in the environment that are not necessarily related,
Okay.
so.
It's different for different people, right? Everybody responds to it differently. I would encourage you to try a different practitioner, go for 6 or 8 sessions maybe, if that's possible or available to you. I've personally been tapping for 5 years, and I keep tapping because the more I tap, the more that comes up. And so, I think the evolution of can be infinite while you're here in this lifetime. So, keep tapping. Okay, so we'll go on to a couple of tabletop examples. Do you have any questions? Yeah, taking it all in?
Take it on.
Awesome. So going into the tabletop worksheet 1, big table, lots of legs. Worksheet 2, big table on the bottom, little table on top. 2 different examples of that. Worksheet 3 if you want, big table on the bottom, little table on top. We'll do an example. This is something that you can take home with you, that you can work on tonight, that you can work on tomorrow. I'll be floating around for the rest of the evening and tomorrow if you want to kind of pick my brain, if you have a hard time breaking it down. The table legs are let's just start with tabletop 1. Like we said last night, said this morning, the tabletop is the belief system. The table legs are the events that have contributed to that belief system. So the belief system might be good, Maybe we can all focus on a belief system like I'm a hard worker, or I'm a successful person, people like me, I'm a good listener,
I'm loving, I'm caring.
I'm loving, I'm caring. Does anybody else have a good belief system about? So there's events in your life that have contributed to that I'm a loving and caring person belief system. Yes? Does anybody else have a positive belief system that they can think of? Yeah, those ones are the hard ones, eh? So the negative belief system might be something like, I don't deserve, I never do it right, I never do it good enough. Anybody have any others? First one that comes to mind? Don't deserve. Really, really
Not
common.
worthy.
I'm not worthy and don't deserve are probably the two biggest. No, we didn't come into the world that way.
I'm not safe.
Not safe.
It's not safe.
It's not safe. I'm not safe. It's not safe. Anybody have any questions about one that's mulling around that you're not sure of?
I, like, for instance, I mean, I didn't know if this relates to this kind of thing, but like, we come from Pennsylvania where there's a lot of fracking in the oil and gas industry.
There's a lot of what?
They're drilling for oil and gas and, process, to take the shale, gasify the shale in the ground. There's a lot of nasty chemicals. Basically, it really degrades the environment. But the point is, it bothers me. It really
Okay.
makes sense getting rid of this, like, a piece of it. So, could this work for something that's like in the outside world like that? It's not like an opinion I have about myself?
Yes.
Out there, obviously.
It wouldn't necessarily be a tabletop situation, but what I would do is say, what are the different aspects of that bother you? So, I don't like how they're degrading the environment. I don't like how they are spending money where it doesn't need to be spent. You know,
Caring about people's health.
they're not worried about, they don't care about people's health. So you could tap on, even though I don't like that whole oil drilling thing, I'm going to see if I can let that feeling go. But that's probably too big because it really upsets you. Okay, so there's different aspects. So I want you to imagine that feeling. It really upsets me as a forest, and there's different trees in that forest. One of the trees is, I don't like how they're spending the money. There's another tree next to that, and it's, they're not protecting the environment. And there's another tree next to that, whatever, right? You have to do one tree at a time. Most people, when they use EFT, try to take down the forest. They try to take down the whole tabletop or the belief system, which is, you know, like the low self-esteem forest. Okay, well, you could tap on, even though I have this low self-esteem, I love and accept myself. And that might be homework that I would give to someone and say, do that 5 times a day, every day for the next 3 months and come back and see me. But it's way more effective just to tell me what happened to contribute to that. Well, this thing happened with my mom, and then my dad said this, and then my brother beat me up, and then whatever, and tap on those things individually. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And that's the biggest thing that I try to get across in workshops too, because if you're going to take this technique home and tap for yourself, I would really like to see people doing it by starting with the little legs. Okay? Does anybody want me to fill out their tabletop with them so we can all learn by example?
Sure.
How did I know?
Unless it's someone else, definitely.
Well, we'll go, and if anybody else wants to do it, I'll do it with them. That's fine. Okay, so what do you think your top tabletop is?
So, from the list, like.
From the list that we talked about.
Yeah, so the top one that came up was deserving.
Deserving.
I don't deserve.
I don't deserve.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't deserve, we're going to probably turn to worksheet tabletop 2. Or let's do worksheet 3. So what happens is that the not deserving tabletop on the bottom is going to be I don't deserve. And the top tabletop is probably going to be I don't deserve.
Both are I don't deserve?
Right.
Okay.
And you're going to tell me what recent events have occurred in your life that make you feel that way. And then you're going to tell me childhood events that you think may have contributed to that. So let's start with what's the most recent time that you felt I don't deserve? Maybe when you were thinking of initially going into doing the passion test, you wanted to, but you, or how do you know you don't deserve? Tell me that. How do you know that's what I think you're deserving?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I always go back to childhood.
Okay, let's start there.
I think that's where I go, is like,
There was this one time that,
yeah, so some of the key memories are, like what came up last night is being told when, really upset at something, you're a young child, 3 years old, the dad drunk in the bed, calling out the window to my mom who's, gone to drive somebody home after dinner. She comes home and, I'm in tears and, why are you crying? Why are you crying? Right?
so one table leg, why are you crying? Dad said, why are you crying?
Mom said, why are you crying?
Mom said, why are you crying? So I would fill in one table leg, Mom said, why are you crying? But we would do that very specific scene, as specific as we could, because that was one particular night.
Yeah.
Right, so I want all the details. I want to know, was it raining outside? Was it winter? Was it summer? What were you wearing? What was Mom wearing? What was the emotion? What was the expression on her face? And when you focus on that, we would tap until you laugh about it or think about it in a completely different way. Okay. Give me another.
Another one is then a few years later, coming home from school and she's not there and calling into the door and thinking she's inside and, I can't get in the house. And then, I think it was like an hour later, she shows up and she's got groceries and why are you crying?
Why are you crying? Home with groceries. Because they're two separate events, right? So you could just tap on why are you crying, but I prefer if you did the night that she came home and Dad was drunk,
Mm-hmm.
and then the time she came home with groceries,
Mm-hmm.
and then is there a third why are you crying?
No, there's not a third why are you crying, but then the next one is, actually, you know what, yeah. No.
Just tell me what comes up next. Just let it
Actually, so it's
be
a,
natural.
it's a now kind of thing, like a couple of years ago or
Mhm.
a year ago, and it's as an adult, and Karen and I are having this like Biggest Loser contest,
Okay.
and we're over there for dinner, and she's like, "Why aren't you eating this?" Right? Like wanting us to have dessert, like and we're like, "Oh, we don't, oh, Karen, you eat the cake because it's
Mhm.
we're trying to lose weight or whatever." And it's like, "No, why aren't you eating this?" You should
Okay,
be
so
eating
that's a
this, you should
top
be-"
table leg.
Okay, so that's
That's
more
a top
recent.
table leg. Because
Okay.
because the top table is a recent event, and the bottom table, and let's consider the fact that Mom is in the bottom scenario and Mom's in the top scenario.
Mhm.
Okay, so on this table leg up top here,
Mhm.
I want you to put, why aren't you eating the cake?
Okay.
Does everybody see how this is working? You don't have to put in
Yeah.
hers, just for learning purposes, right?
Mhm.
So there's probably a third event, and I want to go back to the tabletop for you, because these events, why are you crying, made you feel like you don't deserve.
I don't know. And I don't know.
I think it's, if you had to name that feeling, it's like, name that tune. With those experiences made you feel like you couldn't trust your own emotions,
Yeah.
or, so I can't trust myself.
Yeah.
Sounds like a better,
Yeah.
well, however you want to phrase that. I don't want to put those words, but, so that tabletop is I don't trust myself.
Mhm.
And the top tabletop would probably be the same. So she keeps attracting those scenarios into her life. Why? Because when she was little, she felt, I can't trust myself because Mom told me basically I shouldn't be crying. Therefore, I can't trust my own emotions. And so you fire that neural pathway, it latches onto a cell, and it keeps recreating decades later. Okay? Is there a third childhood or any?
Yeah. So, going to, I'm now, it's probably in between those 2 years
Okay.
of ages, and I'm in Brownies or something, and I'm going to the ice capades, and I'm waiting for my mom. I'm at the school waiting for the bus, and the bus is ready to leave, and I'm waiting for my mom to come because I have no money for popcorn or something, and then she shows up, and gives me all her change. Oh no, I'm gonna start crying. Anyways,
You want to tap? It's a really good time.
and then that guilt, and actually, I think, yeah, guilt for feeling that way, like guilt for feeling selfish. Because when I realized later on, I didn't remember this, until late last year, under hypnosis, realized that my grandmother had died. So her dad had died.
Oh.
And so I
You
think
did-
as a child, I felt so guilty, feeling selfish that,
Right.
you know, she's going through all this pain, you know, I'm looking for money for popcorn kind of thing.
Can we tap?
Sure.
When you're ready. We'll tap with it. Anybody okay with that? Even though I had that guilty feeling.
Even though I have that guilty feeling,
Maybe little Barry can choose to let that go.
Barry, choose to let that go.
Even though little Barry had that guilty feeling,
Even though Barry had that guilty feeling,
she can choose now to let that go.
she can choose not to let that go.
She can choose now to let that,
Sorry, now to let that go.
because it's safe to do so.
Because it's safe to do so.
Okay. This guilty feeling.
This guilty feeling.
This guilty feeling. This guilty feeling. This guilty feeling. I didn't know. I didn't know Grandpa had died. This guilty feeling. I just wanted money for popcorn. This guilty feeling. This guilty feeling. Back of the hand. Close. Open. Right. Left. Big circle. Good, other way. Good, side to side. This guilty feeling. Okay, I'm going to show you one more technique I haven't done with you before. Just switch hands. You're going to do a floor to ceiling eye roll for me. It's going to take about 6 seconds. So you can look down at the floor, and it's going to just take 6 seconds as you repeat after me to slowly look up towards the ceiling. Don't move your head, just your eyes. Say this guilty feeling. Slowly look ahead. This guilty feeling. I just wanted money for popcorn. I didn't know Grandpa had died. Look up, up, up. Look up, up, up. I didn't know Grandpa had died. Look up, up, up. This guilty feeling. High as you can. Good. Inner part of the eyebrow. This guilty feeling. This guilty feeling. I wanted money from Mom. I didn't know what Grandpa had died. This guilty feeling. Give my mind and body permission to see the situation differently. Give my mind and body permission to see the situation differently. In a more loving and compassionate light. I was just a little girl, choosing to see the scene differently. In a more loving and compassionate light. I was just a little girl, letting this guilty feeling go. Good. Breath in. Breath out. So guilt was probably a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. Where is it now? Say I felt horribly guilty because I wanted money for popcorn. Still a 6. You want to do one more round with me? Yeah!
Wasn't expecting that one coming.
Yeah! Let's do one more round, see if we can bring it down a little bit. If you could reframe it, how would you reframe it?
I think when you said I didn't know my grandpa died, I think back then I did know
Oh,
my
okay.
grandpa died. It was that when I would, when that memory would come up for me, like whenever I would remember that as a child, I didn't remember that my grandpa died. I always just told the story of, oh, I'm waiting for the bus with my mom. And it was actually, the memory was always somewhat of a good one from the standpoint of my mom. She was a single mom, and she came and, and she gave me all the money she had. And
What triggers the guilt?
What triggered the guilt was when I, through a hypnosis session, that memory, I got that more information from it, and it was like, wow, it was, my grandpa had died. I remembered my grandpa had just died, and so now there was this guilt associated with it. Here I am as a child, like, and so the guilt was also in these ones too, where it's,
Well, just
I
stay-
shouldn't be crying
Just stay
because-
focused on the scene though. You felt guilty because
Yeah,
you asked
because-
you asked for money from your
Yeah,
mom.
because I'm selfish,
Ah.
you know what, she's going through this, she's dealing with now the death of her father, and I'm worried about me and getting money for popcorn. Like, I shouldn't be
Okay.
crying, she's got enough problems,
Even though
even though
I still have this guilty feeling.
I still have this guilty feeling.
How selfish am I?
How selfish am
I just want money for popcorn.
I just want money for popcorn.
And my mom's dealing with the death of her dad.
And my mom's dealing with death for dad.
But maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to see the situation differently,
to see the situation differently,
in a more loving and compassionate light.
in a more loving and compassionate way.
Even though I still have some of this guilty feeling,
Even though I still have some of this guilty feeling.
I was so selfish.
I was so selfish.
I was a little girl and I wanted money for popcorn.
I was a little girl and wanted money for popcorn.
And my grandfather had just died.
My grandfather just died.
How selfish am I?
How selfish.
But maybe I can choose
Maybe I can
to see that situation differently. Good. This remaining guilty feeling. This remaining guilty feeling.
This remaining.
This remaining guilty feeling.
This is remaining.
This remaining guilty feeling. How selfish was I? How selfish was I? Remaining guilty feeling. Remaining guilty. Remaining guilty feeling. How selfish was I? Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to see the situation differently.
to see the situation differently.
Back of the hand opening up my mind
Open up my mind
to see the situation in a different light.
to see the situation in a different light.
Close. Open. Look down hard to the right. Down hard to the left. Big circle. Other direction. Good. Horizontal to the right. And to the left. To the right. And to the left. Good. Remaining guilty feeling.
Remaining guilty feeling.
Switch hands for me. How selfish was I?
How selfish was I?
Close. Open. Down hard right. And down hard left. Big circle. Other direction. Good. Horizontal right. And left. And right. And left. Inner part of the eyebrow. Maybe I can choose
Maybe I can choose
to let this guilty feeling go.
to let this guilty feeling go.
Choosing to see the scene differently.
Choosing to see something different.
Letting this selfish feeling go.
Letting this selfish feeling go.
I'm just a little girl.
Just a little girl.
Choosing to see the scene differently.
Choosing to see the scene differently.
In a more loving and forgiving light.
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 Forgiving myself for being just a little girl.
Forgiving myself for just being a little girl.
Choosing to see it differently.
Choosing to see it differently.
Opening up my mind and my heart
Opening up my mind and my heart.
to see it in a more loving and forgiving light.
To see it in a more loving and forgiving light.
Seeing it in a more loving and forgiving light.
Seeing it in a more loving and forgiving light.
Good. Breath in. Breath out. And just check in with the scene again. Tell me. It was the word forgiving that seemed to land for you.
Yeah. And just a little girl.
Just a little girl. Can you scale the guilt for me? 1 to 10?
It's probably like a 2 now.
Oh.
A 1 or a 2.
1 or a 2?
It's like, yeah, it's, you know, it's, no, maybe it's not even that actually. No, it's not even, there isn't the guilt.
Guilt to 0.
The guilt is there.
Selfish and guilt might be different. So those are two different
Yeah.
aspects.
Because it's not the guilt now.
What's the selfish?
Or maybe selfish.
Right.
And but even the selfish is down because it's as a little girl.
Okay.
It's like the seeing the scene differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, maybe it's okay to be selfish as a little girl.
Oh.
You're a little girl. Little kid. That's what they are. That's what you're supposed to do. That's your job.
Wasn't old enough to work, I didn't have any money, so if I need to eat, I gotta ask mom for money.
Exactly. Like,
And maybe that's just what your mom needed to be like, okay, but I'm still a mother.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So that's one table leg. You can write it down, but yeah.
And when we're tapping someone else's issue, we're not putting anything.
No.
I don't need your shit.
Exactly. You can have your own shit.
If you
That's
have
good.
any,
That's great.
um,
That's great.
if you have any guilt or you have any, what's the word,
Like,
selfish
yeah.
about anything in your life, then you might find that shifts and changes for you. If you don't want to be focused on her stuff, you can go inside and focus on something else while you're tapping. Something else that you might have felt guilty about at some point in your life, which may or may not be true for you, I don't know. Most of us at some point have felt guilty about something. So you can just focus on a scene that makes sense for you as you're tapping down the points. But no, you're not gonna go home and feel this feeling of, shoot, damn, I got my own stuff to work on. That's good, that's a good question, thank you. So we've got 3 childhood, we decided that the tabletop was a bit more, not necessarily that you don't deserve, but that I can't trust my feelings because mom always asks why am I crying. And so you might find 2 other scenarios for the top table legs where mom kind of makes you feel like you can't trust yourself. Right, when she asks you why aren't you eating the dessert. Was there anything else that would be a top table leg that's a bit more recent where you felt I can't really trust myself?
You know, it's funny because even just going through that, it's like when I think of situations now with her, it's like,
Oh.
it's just her opinion.
Oh, it's just her opinion, it's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So the beauty is that sometimes it happens quickly for people. If we had 3 table legs in the top and 3 table legs in the bottom, if we were to do a session together, we would do the top 3 table legs first, and then we would do the bottom 3 table legs together. But what happens is, it's just mama's opinion, it's got nothing to do with me. So you can go home and feel like I can trust myself now because all of those scenarios where you felt like you couldn't trust yourself because of how mom reacted to you have dissipated. Like we said, when you take out the table legs, the tabletop or the belief system collapses. Okay? But you can't just take off the tabletop because if the events are still there, the tabletop will come back. It's great, isn't it? You provided a fabulous example, so I really appreciate you sharing. There's always at least 1 or 2 people in the group that are like, all right, Carol, I'm ready. Are you ready? Because here it comes. So, it's good. All right. So I'll leave that. If you have any questions about it, I'm really open to helping you work through some tabletops and table legs. Okay. Any other questions to this point? We'll do one other, we'll do Ho'oponopono.
Why are there different diagrams? Like, you used the last page for her for a specific situation.
Uh-huh.
Are these other 2 ones for other specific, when should this be used versus like the second one?
Okay, so the first one would be used, I would probably use that for like a fear or a phobia or what have you. So if I had a fear of spiders, the tabletop would be, I have a fear of spiders, and the table legs would be the different aspects of that. I don't like the legs, I don't like the furry body, I don't like the way they crawl, I don't like the way they move, I don't want them to jump on me. Those are all different aspects, right? The second one is very similar to the third page, where you're looking at what's going on in my life now. What's my belief system about men, for example, or I can't attract a partner, I'm having difficulty attracting a partner, and all the situations that have occurred within the past couple of years that support that. And then the bottom tabletop would be I'm gonna guess it might be a relationship with your father, for example, right? So the bottom tabletop is childhood, the top tabletop is recent events. And the reason that they're stacked is because whatever happened on the bottom tabletop, it usually continues into adulthood. Not always, but sometimes.
How about like the duplicate?
You could just do them separately. Sometimes they're kind of interwoven, but they're really just an example. Like, she could have done her mom's table on the left, how her mom treated her as a child and what keeps occurring in her life now, and her dad could have been the tabletop on the right. So how her relationship with dad, the table legs that she remembers with dad that were negative experiences and what she came to believe as a result of that, how that belief that continues to unfold in her life now would be the top tabletop, and the table legs are recent events. So that's why there's two in that diagram, and it could just be like mother and father, or it could be two totally different things. It doesn't really matter. Do you see what I mean? And then the last page, of course, is, again, the childhood's on the bottom, and the top is recent.
Are you trying to abolish the emotion, or are you trying to accept it?
Am I trying to abolish it or to accept it? What the phrase is, we're loving and accepting ourselves even though we have this emotion. So the idea is to let her feel it and let her experience it, to balance it and let her see it a different way. So as she sees the scene in a different way, because now the scene hasn't really changed, the event still happened, but now she sees, well, that I wasn't being selfish, I was just a little girl. So I've kind of abolished the feeling of, she's abolished.
But she's actually done both then.
Yeah, she's abolished the feeling of guilt, and she's abolished the feeling.
And also accepted it.
Right, and I've accepted it. I've accepted it, and then I've abolished it. Now I've replaced it with a feeling of acceptance. It was okay, I was just a little girl, which is a much better feeling than guilt and shame about the event. And if we know that all these negative emotions at some point get stored in our body and are really connected to the physical ailments at some point in our life, like low back tension or problems in the knees and the hips and the jaw and what have you, well, if we can go back and rewire that and reprocess that, what some people find is the physical ailments or problems that they have begin to dissipate as well. Yeah. You can also work on the physical, and sometimes the emotional comes up in the process. I've also had the inverse. So.
How would you do that with the tabletop? Take like a body part, let's say like the knees that were affected, and you just kind of guess
Yeah, sometimes I ask people what happened, what was going, either two questions, what happened that when you first started noticing the pain, or what was going on in your life at that time when the discomfort started. Sometimes my personal experience is that pain and discomfort has probably always been there, I just haven't been conscious of it, because it's just beneath the surface of conscious awareness. And it's not until we have time to really relax and get away from our busy lives that we're like, wow, how long has that been there? You know? So, if you're going to tap on physical pain or discomfort, again, be as specific as you can. Even though I have this shooting pain in my left shoulder, even though I have this dull ache in my low back, maybe I can choose to open up my mind and see what that's really about. Right? So there's lots of different ways to finish the statement. I love and accept myself anyway is a really good, when in doubt, use that statement. But my personal preference is to, maybe I can open up my mind to see what that's really about. And after a couple of rounds, I just ask somebody, I want you to focus on your low back and tell me what your next instant thought is. Well, you know what? This low back pain started when da-da-da-da was going on in my life. Oh, okay. What was that like for you? Oh, it was awful. It was this and that. Okay. Even though. Right? So it's a bit of Freudian free association, in all honesty, through when we kind of get into a session. It's usually an hour, hour and a half if I'm going to do a private session, and by the time we're 45 minutes in, they're in a relaxed state and conscious mind is usually out of the way. And I can just tell me, what's your next thought? What does that feeling remind you of? What does that feeling remind you of? What does that feeling remind you of? What's your earliest memory? You get to the root, you get to the table legs, the belief system collapses. So, it's an art. It's a bit of an art. Okay. So, something else that I'm really fascinated with, and I'll just share kind of on a side note. We've kind of covered the concept. Do you have a question before I go on?
No,
Oh, because you're just
I was there.
okay. So again, we've talked about rewiring our reaction to something, right? So If I know that if I keep reacting with frustration or I keep reacting with this negative emotion, I'm just strengthening that neural pathway and I don't want to do that anymore, and it just keeps showing up for me. If you're in a position where you don't want to tap or you're not comfortable tapping, something you can do instead is called the Ho'oponopono mantra. I don't want you to worry about the word, it's written down for you. The Ho'oponopono mantra actually comes from Hawaii. It's not my personal mantra. It was actually practiced by a psychiatrist in Hawaii by the name of Dr. E. Halilakala Hu Len. And we'll just call him Dr. Len for short because he prefers that and it's much easier, and I'm not from Hawaii and I don't speak Hawaiian. So he was a psychiatrist that was asked to go into one of the most challenging psych wards in Hawaii, where no staff would stay longer than a couple of months. Nurses would walk down the hall with their back to the wall so they would feel safe, and they couldn't hold a psychiatrist on staff. And so they call in Dr. Len, and he says, okay, I will come and work, but you have to let me do it on my own terms. So most psychiatrists who would go in would obviously meet one-on-one with the patients, kind of assess what was going on, and Dr. Len said, I will not meet with any patient that is on this floor, but I will look through their files. So as Dr. Hulen proceeded for the next year to work on this ward, he would read the files, and what he would actually do is notice what would come up within him, his personal reaction within him as he read the file. How do I react? Do I feel anger? Do I feel disgust? Do I feel however he felt when he read the files? And then he would do the mantra. And the mantra is very simple. It's I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So it's 4 lines. We'll say them over and over again until you remember them. So he would do this mantra all day long as he read the files. He would notice the reaction. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. He would read another file. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So as he is balancing and calming and feeling love and forgiveness within himself, guess what happens to the patients on the ward? They are not separate from him, right? We're all connected. Patients get better, right? So a lot of these patients were actually criminals with, a very hefty criminal record. And what would actually happen is that the patients would, have to go to court, and they would say, you know what I did was wrong, and, I recognize that now. And patients that were on medications started coming off medications, and the whole ward began to shift and change. Why? It's not that the external reality is changing, is that his internal reality is changing. So he's reacting to the external world differently. This is the whole changing reality from the inside out concept. Okay? I'll give you my own personal experience, since I've had many, but I'll give you 2 because they're my favorite to tell from using this mantra. I want you to imagine I'm in my kitchen doing dishes, and I'm thinking, I really wish my husband would come help me. And I'm in a very negative state. I'm in an irritated state because I have a very strong neural pathway from being a little girl where my brother didn't have to do dishes. So I have a belief system, whether it's true or not, that men don't do dishes. And that causes me with, some frustration and some irritation. So I'm doing the dishes by myself. And my husband's in the dining room just around the corner, on his laptop. So do you think that the feeling of frustration and irritation is going to bring him any closer to help me dry dishes?
No.
Probably not. And so instead I choose to say, well, that's an old memory. That happened when I was a little girl, that my dad didn't help, my brother didn't help. That was fine. That was how our household was run. But is that really happening right now? I wonder. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Now you're saying this to the divine. You're saying this to a higher consciousness. You're not saying it to yourself. You're saying it to your understanding of the divine, God, whatever it is you want to call it. Dear divine, I am sorry for the erroneous belief system within me that men don't do dishes. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you, divine. I am sorry. Please forgive me for the erroneous belief system within me that I developed as a child that men don't do dishes. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I swear I wish I had a video camera, because my husband, within 30 seconds, now I had no expectations because I just learned how to I just learned the mantra. I had no expectations of what was going to happen. My husband gets out of his chair without me saying, I'm saying this silently to myself as I'm doing dishes. I'm not saying it out loud. He knows nothing about the mantra. I'm quietly doing it to myself. He gets out of his chair and comes in the kitchen and grabs a tea towel and says, Carol, do you want some help? I swear to God.
That's wild.
I was in disbelief, and I was like, yes, I would like some help. That would be great. And I would wash your dishes. I'm like, I gotta do this more often. My second example, I keep in mind, if you're going to use the mantra, you must have no expectations. It's not any different than doing EFT, okay? I am changing my emotional reaction to a situation, and the only way to change my external reality is to change my internal reaction to the situation. I don't care if you do EFT, I don't care if you laugh and smile in some other way, I don't care if you do Ho'oponopono mantra, I don't care what you do, but if you want to change your external reality, you have to change your internal reaction to that reality. So my next experience, I'm driving down a main street to go home. There's 2 lanes that merge into 1 lane, and there's a truck in the left lane, and I'm in the right lane, and I'm like, do I go in front of him? I don't want to cut him off. Maybe I'll brake. No, it's one of those moments where you're like, all right, who's going? And so I move in front. Now, I didn't feel that I cut him off. That was my reality, though. His reality was obviously very different, as he honks his horn at me and sticks his arm out the window and particular finger at me, and he was obviously quite angry. So I'm in the rear view mirror going, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling like, oh, this guy's gonna follow me home, he's got some road rage issues. And so I say, I love you, dear divine, I love you. I'm sorry for the erroneous belief system in me that has created the situation. I've created it, I'm here, I'm present, it must be me creating it. Please forgive me, thank you. I trust that you will work it out. I have no idea how that's going to work out. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I look in my rearview mirror, he signals, then turns left and disappears, just literally just disappears from my reality. Are they correlated? I can't really tell you that. Do I use the mantra anyway? Absolutely. Absolutely. Am I here to say, it's different for everybody. It's different for everybody, but I could go on and on. I've actually written down hundreds of experiences that I've had in terms of small miracles manifesting or focusing my attention on something and things coming into my life, but that's my next book. That's book number 2.
So it's really that you didn't have any expectations, it's really what you feel.
Right, because remember, my expectations can only come from my belief system, which is this big. The divine has infinite options of how it can change that for me. Right? So I'm letting go of how it can unfold. And if you do the mantra and you're like, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. Okay, well, divine, you haven't changed it yet. Yeah. That's, yeah, if you're like, I said I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, like 10 times, yeah, that's not where you need to be in order for it to work. And the difficult...
There's a Zen saying that no appointment, no disappointment.
No appointment, no disappointment. No appointment, no disappointment. Because you can't possibly see how it can work out. You can't possibly see. And, you might have your idea of how you want it to work out, but I'll tell you, the divine's got a way better way than you could possibly imagine. That will feel much more effortless and in flow in a much more beautiful way. The trusting that is the difficult part, because the egoic mind says, no, I know the best way. I know the best way. And I'll work hard to do it. But if you let the divine work it out, it's just so much more beautiful than that. It's exciting. So some people have a hard time with certain parts of the phrase. So Ho'oponopono, if you were to define it in Hawaiian, actually means to make right or to rectify an error. So according to ancient Hawaiians, error arises from thoughts that are tainted by painful memories from the past and the subconscious mind. Dr. Hulen's got a couple of videos on YouTube. They're interviewing him in Hawaii, and he's sitting on a bench, and he says this beautiful description of when we're born, it's like we see the world through this perfectly clear glass. And then the glass gets kind of tainted. It gets darker and it gets darker and darker through our experiences and belief systems as they develop. And what Ho'oponopono, the mantra, is doing is just clearing the glass so we can see divine working in perfect order. Right? Because like we said, I keep attracting into my reality the same feelings that I keep feeling. But if every time you felt that feeling, frustrated or whatever, overwhelmed, or my husband doesn't help me, I gotta do everything, that's my other belief system. If I just replace that with every time that happens in my life, I replace it with I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, that feels way better than frustrated, in my reality anyway.
You know, and just to interrupt,
Uh-huh.
I have some patients in practice who had like 7 car accidents in 5 years. And none of them were their fault actually, they got rear-ended or
Yeah.
somebody ran. And you just start thinking, how is it possible that somebody can have, accidents that are really not in their control? It's almost like, as you said, are they attracting that kind of
7 car accidents in 5 years, and there's other people that
never had accidents?
That never have
so,
accidents.
So what is with that? It's like they have like one thing after the other. Is there some kind of are they creating their own reality?
Right. So some people will say, well, like whatever you keep giving your attention to is what you keep attracting. And they say, well, I wasn't thinking about a car accident. Okay, but how did you feel after you have the car accident? Oh, well, I'm frustrated, and I'm overwhelmed, and I'm disappointed, and okay. Well, the more that you feel that, the more that you will create situations, your reticular activating system will find within your environment another reason, another way for you to feel that exact same feeling. And so you attract it into your life. And I love the law of attraction, and I love The Secret, but it's a bit more complex in terms of how your brain is creating your reality. So to get someone out of that,
Take it with the driving license.
take them with driving, or help them get addicted to a better feeling. Because they're probably always in, I would imagine, this chaotic state. They're probably always in this chaotic state.
I mean, that's such a big self story. I mean, it's like it goes on and on, and it's like,
Right.
how is it possible that somebody could have this much?
Because there might be a secondary gain or benefit that they're getting out of the car accident. I get attention from my physician, I get a new car every time, or I get something out of it. I get some they might get. There might be a secondary gain or benefit to it. Yeah. Back to Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is the process of only looking within yourself and working on the negative memories within you or your subconscious mind. Once you get yourself into the rhythm with the divine, everybody gets into rhythm too, and the external world begins to change to be seen in a more positive light. Peace begins with me is one of Dr. Hulen's favorite phrases, and it's about accepting 100% responsibility for whatever you're creating and bringing into your life. That means the good and the bad. And we're really fantastic at saying, oh, look what I created, this is good, I'm having a great day. And when we create bad stuff, we're like, oh, that wasn't me, that's for sure. But the beauty is that if you just said, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, or you did EFT, every time something negative came into your life, it would slowly, I'm not saying it's happening overnight, I'm saying if you were consistent with it for, I would say, a year or more, let's say if you all came back next year and you had really been steady with Ho'oponopono or EFT, and we come back next year, you'd be like, Carol, you'll never guess what happened. My life has changed. It's now like this, and it's like this, and it's like this. I never could have thought it would happen that way. I never would have thought it would happen that way. Because I'll tell you, there's some days that I think I wouldn't be standing up here in front of you. You know, having traveled the world and written my first book and all these other things. So when something comes up, you notice your reaction to it, I don't like it, a coworker's yelling at you, you're having a bad day. Dear Divine, so here you're just acknowledging your understanding of the divine, whatever that is. I am sorry. Some people have a hard time with that until I let them know there was a bracket there that said, I'm sorry for my erroneous thoughts that are within me that have created this situation. Like my erroneous belief system was obviously men don't like to do dishes. Women have to do all the work. And that's my belief system, and that's why I'm creating that reality. That's why I was creating that reality, because I'm not doing that anymore.
How do you explain to folks, so that situation is very close to home and kind of,
Yeah.
you can relate to that. How do you relate, say, earthquakes or
Oh.
bigger kind of things that are truly out of our control, but technically
Right.
it's not. You know what I mean? Like we create that reality as well.
I think that's more of a collective consciousness creating a collective consciousness that's shifting in accordance with Mother Earth and her divine plan.
Right.
That's way bigger, right? So I personally only use Ho'oponopono for more patterns that I recognize I keep track of. Okay? Having an earthquake isn't something that happens very often for most of us, so we're looking at negative patterns in our lives. That's why we're using EFT in response to that pattern, or we're using Ho'oponopono mantra in response to that pattern, because earthquakes are happening, not really a pattern. Because there's, let's say for example, someone's been a woman's been abused as a child. How often do we see it? The statistics are actually quite high that they'll be abused as a teenager and as a young woman and as they get older. How does that? It's like the 7 car accidents in 5 years. How does that happen? How does that happen? Because of the belief systems that get developed at that initial time, right?
So even that's a good example too, that woman and the 5 car accidents. And us sitting here, to just, like, we could Ho'oponopono on her from the standpoint
Yes.
of we've created her having these accidents. Or, you
Right.
know what I mean?
We've even
Like,
created the reality of all of us being here in this particular moment.
Right.
Right. Because Dr. Hulan actually encourages people not to teach Ho'oponopono. Well, because you're creating your own reality. So why am I teaching you? Because you're all in my reality.
Well, because you're helping people that are not as conscious, perhaps, become more conscious of their
Right. But if I see something in my reality that I don't like, instead of teaching, if someone comes into my life, if my husband didn't do dishes with me, I could go tell him about Ho'oponopono, but I really shouldn't be telling him about Ho'oponopono, I should just be doing it. Right? So the more that I do it, the more that I will shift and change my reality. That is the only thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and it would have an effect on your husband, right? If you just did it and you didn't tell him what you were doing, you did have an effect.
Yes.
You were very dishes. But if you want to create people that have the same consciousness.
Right.
You know,
You have to share it.
you have to share it.
Yeah. Because we might never see each other again, and you can go home and do it.
I think you probably read the intention experiment,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they actually did meditation in certain cities and the crime rate dropped a little.
Yeah, the Maharishi effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that, how do you explain that? There's no good explanation for it. But as you said, it could be creating a different reality in that whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm.
To create a collective consciousness that is
Right. So the more groups of people meditating actually because they're meditating on love or compassion or kindness, and crime rates go down because of what they're focusing their attention on. And so when you're doing Ho'oponopono, you don't have to say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. You don't have to say it in that particular order, and you don't have to say all 4 phrases. If you just said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, to every negative thing that came in, if you just responded with, I love you. Initially it's just a thought. Eventually it becomes this feeling radiating out from your heart center. Right? I hope at some point you get to experience that. And so when you feel that feeling, it's the external begins to change, only because you've changed inside. Right? So the I'm sorry part is to the divine. I'm sorry because I obviously have some sort of belief system that keeps attracting these car accidents, these people abusing me, these whatever it is, right? Or these particular situations. Please forgive me. A lot of people don't want to ask for forgiveness, but a feeling of forgiveness is a better feeling than resentment or frustration or self-doubt. I love you and thank you. The I love you part is because you're feeling that expression of love for the divine and vice versa, receiving it. And the thank you part is the trusting and knowing that the divine will work it out in some greater way that you can't possibly imagine. I'm letting that go. And so I like doing Ho'oponopono for something in reaction, and I have no expectation because I don't know if it's going to happen as instantly as it did in the dishes situation and the guy with the road rage situation. Because sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it happens over the next week. The person comes up to me and says, you know what, Carol, I'm really sorry about what happened, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, wow, that was really easy. That worked out better than I thought. Sometimes it happens a month later, sometimes it happens 6 months later. So, no expectations. Any questions about Ho'oponopono? You can put in, if you go to YouTube, just put in Dr. Hugh Len or Ho'oponopono, and you can watch him. He's this funny old gentleman from, I think he's like in his 80s now, I don't know. He's a really funny old guy from
So
Hawaii.
he's still alive.
Yeah, yeah, as far as I know. All right, so tomorrow morning, I think we're in here again at 9:15. If anybody's open to filling out a tabletop or bringing a tabletop or a couple of table legs tomorrow morning, I'm happy to tap with you on that. So tomorrow is just about a bit more experiential and hopefully learning from example. So that's it for this evening.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. Have a great night. Sleep well.
You too.
So, I will.